Hey, everybody, this is Scoots. This is a new kind of experimental version of Sleep With Me we've never done before. So welcome. These are just bedtime stories from our podcast, Sleep With Me. And to make them feel fresh, these ones are from a couple years ago. So if you're a regular listener, you might get a refresh. And if you're new, these are just bedtime stories from a show called Sleep With Me. They're strange, they're meandering, they're a little bit different. And all this is made possible by listeners like you, regular listeners like you. And so I just want to let you know that's how we're able to put the show out. And so if you are a fan of Sleep With Me, you listen to it on a regular basis, please consider supporting the show. You get ad-free episodes, you get ad-free story-only episodes, tons of other cool stuff at Sleep With Me Plus. That's sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But if you're in a position and you have some money every month, or you say, hey, maybe I don't watch that streaming service, I'd rather give it to a podcast, think about your favorite podcast. It doesn't have to be Sleep With Me, and support that podcast. If it is Sleep With Me, I consider supporting the show, would be great. But if it isn't, or there's a podcast you listen to way more, brings you a lot of value during the day, please support that podcast. Podcasting is going through a different time right now, and your favorite podcast, the one you get the most out of, could use your support the most. So consider supporting it however they request support. Just check it out, like listen to the show or check out their website, or consider supporting Sleep With Me. If Sleep With Me, you say, oh no, Sleep With Me is the one I listen to the most, sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary, it's time for the podcaster that's bringing you some relaxation. It's almost time to slow it down, to take your mind off of stuff and get goofy, get silly. Come on, let's get silly and sidetracked and silly. It's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots. This is a quick message here. If you get a lot out of Sleep With Me, if you're a regular listener, you like these new things we're trying out, like the story-only version of the show. If you're new, don't worry about any of this. But if you're a regular listener of Sleep With Me, or you're a regular listener of any podcast, if you have a favorite podcast, and it's not Sleep With Me, that's totally cool. If you have podcasts you listen to way more, or you get way more value out of, I totally understand that. Consider supporting that podcast. Podcasting as an industry is kind of going through a weird phase right now. Direct support from listeners is going to be, it seems like it's going to be the future of most shows. And so consider supporting the podcast you really love. And you could do that. You could find out, you could listen to the show and see how they ask to be supported. Or reach out to them and say, hey, how can I support you? Or if you can't afford, a few dollars a month, you say, hey, how else can I support you? But if Sleep With Me is the one, Sleep With Me Plus is the best way to support Sleep With Me. Sign up for Sleep With Me Plus. Not only you get an unbelievably sweet, different ways to listen to the show, but it's a huge help for us to be able to do stuff like this. But yeah, think about what your favorite podcast is, and then go ahead and go to their website, or if you already know how they like to be supported, support that show. Thanks and good night. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome to Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is to create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. It could be thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, changes in time or temperature, changes in routine, whatever it is that's keeping you up, so stuff you're thinking about, anything you're experiencing physically or that's coming up for you emotionally. Those are three of the zones, but it could be, it could be something to travel, whatever's keeping you awake. I'd like to take your mind off of that. What I'm going to do is I got this nice safe place here set aside, reserved, and it's one of the first, what you are a VIP, and that means you, where you say, hey, come on in. This safe place is welcoming, opening. It's not exclusive, but it has a feeling believe it or not, we do have, I don't know if you're familiar with the Muppets, but you might not believe this because it's probably not exactly true, but it's imaginarily true. Is the Muppets? They had a Muppet show, so that was like a regular gig. And then the Muppets. I got to get back to the intro, but then the Muppets had now they're in movies, right, from time to time. And not every Muppet is like, a Kermit, Miss Pig, the big draws. There's Muppets that are on the lower on the marquee or the posters, right? And those Muppets may or may not take side jobs or freelance gigs. And I'm just saying, if any Muppets did, Dr. Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker would probably be running a Sleep With Me Labs somewhere. And they would be the ones working on that, what did I say? Exclusive, where it feels exclusive. You say, well, here's the things with me. I've never been on a cruise, never been to Sandals or Club Med or the one with all the romance where everybody's, where the couple looks like they're, I don't know, is that Sandals or was that in the 80s? I know I've seen an ad where this couple looks like they say, well, that looks exclusive. Or a club level. I haven't stayed at club. I don't spend a lot of time on club levels, or private clubs, but, or clubs in general. What was my point? Oh, but when you think about those things, you think about, ooh, it feels exclusive. That's what this safe place feels like. You're important because your sleep's important. And it's important to me. Also, it's important to me to go off topic early. So I'm going to create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, feelings. Oh, I said that physical. Oh, what I'm going to do is send my voice across the deep, dark night, get mixed up, go off topic. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, other stuffing, a lot of stuffing, filler, fluff, all that stuff. You say, I wonder if a Muppet has ever written like an ode to my stuffing. Who would do the odes? I'm sure maybe Sam the Eagle, but that would be a little bit more of a patriotic ode. Fozzie would do a joke ode. Gonzo possibly. Miss Piggy would do one probably, but that would go. So, anyway, who are the Muppets? Oh boy, you missed out. But never too late to discover them. In fact, I think the Mystery Bard watches the Muppet Show and has encouraged me to rewatch the Muppet Show with my daughter, and I take that advice. I'm taking that advice to heart. Okay, but where was I? I'm going to send I'm lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders. If you're new, sorry, yeah, welcome. Sorry about that. I've gone off. I guess I don't know, maybe it's, I've had Rainbow Connection recently with the Muppets or something. It's hardy har. Okay, if you're new though, welcome. I'm glad you're here. This podcast is a bit different, so I want to set up a couple things for you. One, I'm glad you're here. Your sleep or taking your mind off stuff, keeping you company, that's important to me. So I'm going to be here just to take your mind off stuff. So here's the thing. No pressure to listen to me. You can fall asleep whenever you want. You could listen however you want. Some listeners will listen close. Some listeners listen kind of amused or bemused. Some listeners imagine me like with a Muppet on. I don't know if anyone's ever imagined me sitting with a Muppet on my knee. You say, Muppet on your knee, $1,000 fee. And it's a great way to, I said, well, that's just how my brain works. It goes from one thing to another. That was water on the knee. Thank you. But here's the thing. You don't need to listen to me. Okay, that's one thing if you're new. Second thing is there's no pressure to fall asleep. These shows are an hour plus because I'm here to keep you company as you drift off. I'm more here as your companion, walking at your side, providing you with some friendly banter and distraction as you drift off. Because I really, truly believe you do deserve a good night's sleep, but I feel like there's too much pressure around that, right? You deserve it. And I just want to ease you into it. So no need to listen No pressure to fall asleep. And structurally, what to expect. The show starts off with a few minutes of business. That's how we keep a podcast free and coming to everybody. Then we have an intro. The intro is kind of like a bedtime wind down. It's like a 12-minute show within a show where I slowly guide you towards bedtime. Like some listeners listen to the intro while they get ready for bed. Some listeners listen to the intro while they're in bed, drifting off. Some listeners fall asleep to the intro. A few percentage of listeners skip the intro. And a lot of people, or more and more people, listen during the day. I guess particularly to the intros, but sometimes to the stories too, for a little break during the day too. But the intros where I try to explain what the podcast is to the new listener every time. And this is where it is like a Muppet show or a Muppet movie, or just like the word Muppet. If you didn't like, you say, well, I don't know what a Muppet is, but I know what that word sounds like. And you'd say, Scoots, it sounds like when you're trying to explain what the podcast is for the 775th time. And you try. So it's like the up it part, but you never get there, which is like the part. And I say, exactly. It's it's actually part of my method. Actually, that's why it's a real, totally intentional that I say, one day I'm going to find the perfect metaphor for a podcast. It turns out that whatever this Muppet-based metaphor isn't the perfect one, especially since I don't even remember what my original point about the Muppets was. It was something, because I have Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker. I'm imagining if they worked for me on the side, if they would be designing new meanders for me, creaky dulcet tones, making a safe, comfortable place. Of course, then you'd say, well, Scoots, I've watched those Muppet movies. What about all the unintended consequences? And I'd say, well, doesn't that usually just happen to Beaker? Beaker's talk about, here's another totally unrelated thing, but in some sense connected. And I don't know if there was an app a while back, Super Better. I'm not sure if that's out there. I was trying to teach people resiliency and the importance of resiliency. And that's considered the important part of I guess like integrated with self-care and mindfulness and in flourishing is resiliency, right? How come, here's the thing, this is a free idea that you will, that will free, trial offer. If you use it, please give me and the giant corporation that owns the rights, full equal financial stakes. But how come Beaker's not used in every resiliency metaphor? Or you'd see, is there a resiliency institute? Well, one, does Bunsen Honeydew run it? Probably. But if there was like the resiliency, like a model of resiliency, like you got the modern major general, modern major, that one. You'd say, what's a model? And you say, well, there's Beaker's in a puppet scooter. And it's a representative model of resiliency. The Beaker story. How about that? Beaker, a model of resiliency. Okay, maybe, possibly, right? So Beaker's a character in the Muppets that was like the foil to Dr. Bunsen Honeydew's grand plans to help the human condition through science. Mostly through mechanics and science, usually. Okay, so, and I'm here to just help you with meanders. So, structure with respect to, so the intro goes on and on and on. Eventually it peters out, not that long from now. Then, believe it or not, we'll go from talking about Muppets to me trying to remember all the plot lines. In 45 minutes, I'll try to remember everything that happened on Game of Thrones and all the seasons. And that should be pretty sleepy because my recall is not excellent. But really, this podcast, and then so there's the intro, some business, then a story or a Game of Thrones discussion. Be very vanilla, don't worry. And then some thank yous at the end. If you want to skip the ads, you just become a patron. It's podcast.com/patron. What else? I think that's it, a structure of the show. I thought there was something else I was going to remember that was Muppet related. Yeah, but I don't know. So yeah, the podcast is here to keep you company and to take your mind off stuff. Because I really do believe, I want you to be resilient. I want you to be rested and be able to go out there tomorrow and flourish, to be in a place where, as you're drifting off or as you're getting ready to bed, you can say, it's not easy being you, but you do deserve a nice resting, safe place, a nice place to relax into, and a nice night of solitude or whatever you call it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like I've got my vocabulary is limited because they said, "What's I mean, maybe part of me is like, we got to get a hold of the big the resiliency council to get up and tell them about Beaker." But the thing is, as I said, I believe you deserve a good night's sleep. I believe you deserve a life where you can get out there and flourish, where you feel treated with dignity and respect, and you can do the same and create, water some flowers out there in the world, And so I hope I can help. And I really appreciate you coming by and checking out the show. It is a bit different, so give it a few tries. Almost every regular listener says it took a few tries till it worked. But I really appreciate it that you came by. You earn a nice drive, and I really hope I can help you fall asleep. So thanks again for coming by. And here's a couple of ways we keep the show going. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. Whether those are thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, changes in time, temperature, like just stuff, everybody's got stuff going on. Sometimes the stuff keeps us awake, right? Now, don't have any, here's something. I've talked about stuffed before, but no stuffed stuff in bed. Like, especially, here's one thing you should not have in bed with you: stuffed shells. Holy moly. And that could mean, originally I was thinking of the pasta shells that are stuffed, but also if you get just stuffed shells, like sand, like what else would you stuff shells with? Well, sand, most likely. Some shells come stuffed with their own or crustaceans, of course, excuse me. All the hermits of the world. Are you stuffed in there? You're more, are you wedged in there? No, you just live there. Okay, great. I'm here with the hermit crab. Actually, could I get back to you? Because I think we could probably create a metaphor for the podcast, but I got to get to the intro. Maybe later, dude. Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, senseless dialogue, possibly, with a hermit crab. And all of it's to take your mind off stuff and help you fall asleep. If you're new, I'm glad you're here. And let me try to give you a couple heads up here. This is a podcast is really silly, so that's one thing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So if this is your first listen, see if you could just passively kind of watch it go by. Almost a bit like, I guess sometimes I've seen hermit crab races, but this would more be like if let's just say you're totally relaxed, you're chilling on the beach, and a hermit crab is at a safe distance, because I know that might not be everybody's thing. It's just, crawling or moving around. You'd say, moved a little bit to the left. And then it went back down as a shell. Was that a shell, or was that, there it goes. It moved 2 inches and then sat back down. Oh, the hermit crab's interrupting me. Oh, that's not what you do. Okay, well, it's a metaphor. Thanks. But just kind of consume this podcast. See if you can consume it passively. No pressure. Here's just structurally what to expect. Show starts off, This is the first divergent path of the podcast. Is that the show starts off with a few minutes of business, and then it has an intro. Intros are around 12 minutes, anywhere from 12 to 14 to 16 to 18 to 17 to 15 to 13, sometimes 11 minutes of me explaining what the podcast is. But it really is, for most listeners, a part of the show. So if you're new, kind of here's the thing, you give the intro a few times too. But eventually, once you find how you like to listen, some listeners skip ahead to the story about 18 minutes. Some listeners start the show as they're getting ready for bed. And then a lot of people, they just listen to the intro as they wind down. Some listeners fall asleep within the first few minutes. But there's no pressure. But the intro is kind of a show within a show. I guess that's my thing. Or that's what I was trying to explain. Then there's some business between the intro and the show. Or the story portion. And then tonight, it'll be a bedtime story. And at the end of the show are some thank yous. That's structurally what to expect. This is one of the few podcasts you don't need to listen to it. You could kind of listen to it. And generally, the reaction I'm shooting for is like, hermit crab, eh? Like they say, Scoots, tell us about, a lot of podcasts have exciting guests on, founders, explorers in space, leaders of great movements and artists, groundbreak visionaries. Well, I had a hermit crab on. Well, kind of. The hermit crab was intermittent. I had an intermittent interview with a hermit crab. But this is the only podcast you don't need to listen to. That's what I was saying. Where you go, hermit crab, eh? That's what I was saying. Like that could be a reaction to the whole podcast. You say, sleep with me, eh? Yeah, I think I fell asleep to it. Other than that, I don't recall. So that's, so that's a structure show. Don't need to listen. But here's the other thing. You don't need to there's no pressure to fall asleep. You don't need to. You can when you do. And what I mean by that is the shows are about an hour. Because I'll be here so you drift off at your leisure. I'm here to keep you company as you drift off, to escort you, to walk at your side, to take your mind off of stuff with my silly banter. And just in case you can't sleep, I want you to know I'm going to be here till the very end, putting in my time. Oh, wait, the hermit crab's interrupting me. Oh, you didn't have anything to add. Okay. If you have any comments, just interrupt me. Okay, I'm doing great. Wow. It's the last thing I expected a hermit crab to say to me. Oh, go ahead. Great job. Okay, wow. There's nothing crabby or hermity about this hermit crab. That's funny. Oh, no, I'm serious. Usually, honestly, I didn't, even when I thought I would interview a hermit crab, I thought it'd be more interesting. I was thinking more about that you live in a shell. Maybe the hermits, I didn't even think about the crabby stuff till you were just so nice to me. But I can imagine, you're probably used to sand. Sand still can bug you. Yeah, because what I was telling the listeners was no stuffed shells in bed. Yeah, exactly, right? You wouldn't want, whatever, is that ricotta cheese in there? You don't know because you're a crab. Of course not. But you wouldn't want any shells. Oh, they'd be more filled with sand than stuffed with sand. You're probably right about that. You're a really observant hermit crab. Comes with the territory. Yeah, I bet you have a good view because you really have your whatever they have. Is there a term like nose to the ground, eye on the floor or something? Because that really makes me think of you. Well, anyway, I don't even know what I was telling the listeners though. Okay, that they could. Oh yeah, I'm going to be here till the end if you can't fall asleep. And the reason I make the show is because I've been there, tossing and turning, and I know how it feels. And for me, I just want something to take my, a little bit of company, and a little bit of redirection. To say, hey, Scoots, seems really frustrating. You can't sleep there. Don't even know why, huh? Wow, that's irritating. Um, anyway, believe it or not, I could tell you a story. I've been talking to this hermit crab, and I could tell you about it. Instead of, oh wow, really? You talk to a hermit crab? Yeah. Well, it came on the podcast that we make. But or will well wait, I'm here for you. Yeah, yeah, it's a really nice. Believe it or not, the crab was neither crabby nor hermity. Yeah, it was actually cool. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. You are a cool crab, though. One cool crab, the hermit crab. Do people still get hermit crabs? Yeah, they do. Do you need, because I was just thinking if I had a store, I'd say, well, that's one cool crab, the hermit crab. Come on in, Saturdays only. It's crab day. Oh, every day's crab day? Yeah, well, but you'd probably rather be on the beach, huh? Yeah, so I guess I won't have a store. Okay, well, I guess, that's it. So I guess we shared the same advice. I guess it's harder to work with a friendly character, believe it or not. You're too kind. No, you are, crab. You know what would be funny is, here's an idea. Like, this is a thought experiment. Just me and you, hermit crab. Are you familiar with the Muppets? You are. This is great news. Great news, then. I don't know if this has ever happened on the Muppet Show, so I guess this would be fan fiction. But what if there was an episode where you came, well, no, okay, I had one idea, but it already changed. What if there was an episode, this probably did happen. You're familiar with Miss Piggy and Kermit, right? Okay, great. You think you know where I'm going. Well, I guess originally I was thinking, what if there's an episode where you and Miss Piggy started seeing one another romantically? Yeah. But then I was thinking it'd be more likely that Miss Piggy would kind of hire you to kind of make Kermit feel jealous, which I think has probably happened before. I just can't picture it. And then she could call you her Hermie, Hermie, like Kermie. Yeah, I mean, it has a ring to it. You're right, especially in Miss Piggy's voice. And that's one of the only celebrities I do, which I can't do on the podcast, is Miss Piggy. But I can only do hi-ya when she karate chops. That's the only Miss Piggy I can do. That you can imagine I sound just like her. Yeah, just like that. And then I can say something frog, but I can't actually say any words. But I can kind of almost get it when she says, frog. Like, that's my bedtime Miss Piggy voice. But that's just an idea. Anyway, I got to get back. Get back to the listeners. It's been great, Hermie. It's just weird that I was calling you Hermie, and then there's a band Herman Hermits or something that has nothing to do with hermit crabs. Okay, well, that's great to know, too. I can move on then. So anyway, I'm glad you're here if you're a new listener. This podcast is a bit different, but it's really here to just keep you company and take your mind off stuff. A bit goofy. If you don't like it, if you've listened this long, I mean, almost every listener, and we've got a decent amount of listeners, including a decent amount of people I hear from that have been listening since the show, like, for 6 years. But every listener, what I mean is, like, every listener that's a regular listener says you got to listen to it 2 or 3 times, before you decide, make a judgment on the podcast, I guess. And that's not really for my benefit, it's just for your benefit. Because if it can help you, that's great. You get put to sleep and you get some comfort. But if this is your 2 or 3 tries, or right away, there are some people that right away, they say, this podcast isn't for me. I have some, sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. And that'll have some other resources. There you go, to try to help you fall asleep. So that's, I guess that's why I'm here, is to take your mind off stuff, to keep you company and help you fall asleep. I really appreciate you coming by and checking out the show. I work very hard. I yearn and I strive. And what do you say? We keep the show going. These are a couple ways we do that. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble, getting to sleep, trouble, staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. We'll do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. You know, if it's things you're thinking about from the past, present, or future, things on your mind, rumination type stuff. Hopefully not any runes that you're translating. No rune. This is the newest rule for the podcast. No runes in bed. Also, I'll try to decipher what that is. Hardy, that was an accidental pun, too. You know what can go in your bed? Accidental puns. I mean, that's a great, especially whether you're alone or with somebody. Nothing says fun like an accidental pun. Now available for free. Accidental puns, they're always free. Accidental pun shop everywhere where people are accidentally funny by just being themselves, like Scoots. What was I saying, though? Create a safe place where you can set aside whatever you're thinking about, especially if you're trying to come up with puns on purpose. That takes a lot of work. I think I already proposed this as a book title, but The Accidental Punist, if that's not a book title, I just legally reserved it for all, hopefully. The accidental, this is not a joke, and I already have gone way off topic early, but the other day I was writing out ideas for the podcast, and I thought of a idea for The Accidental Tourist 2. And I don't think it was The Accidental Punist. It was something else. And I don't know if I wrote it down or I said, And then I said, probably not, Scoots. You didn't write Accidental Tourist. So, and I said, you're right. Moving on. Okay, so stuff you're thinking about, stuff you're feeling, it could be emotions coming up related to your thoughts or just in general. We just have feelings. Or physical sensations that could, any of those things, anything else that could be affecting your sleep in the present, past, or future, whatever it is, I'd like to take your mind off of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be here for over an hour. And if you need me, back-to-back episodes all night long. And I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders. I think you just glimpsed 2 or 3 pointless meanders really early in the show. So if you're new, you were in for your, depending on your definition of a treat, which would probably be a wide definition in this case. Except, in some countries they say it's a treat, it means different things. Oh no, my translation brain said it means kind of the same thing. Okay, well, it works a treat. That's what some people say in the UK about this podcast. My critical brain's disagreeing with me, even though it's a fact. Okay, but I understand that I went off topic. Okay, what was I saying? Send my voice across the TV. Oh, pointless meanders. That was weird. I said pointless meanders, then I went on a pointless meander. Superfluous tangents. A whole lot of other stuff. What I'm going to really do is keep you company as you drift off into sleep. Take your mind off of stuff. And as you drift into the arms of Morpheus, maybe sometimes also I'll use words in, more than one, the same context more than one time, or slightly different contexts. If you're new, I'm glad you're here. A couple of things to get you. This podcast is a little bit different, or a lot bit different, even than other sleep solutions, because this is more of like a friendly banter where I'm here to keep you company and take your mind off stuff. I think I covered that. So structurally, what to expect. Show starts off with a few minutes of business. Thanks for listening to that. That's how we keep the show free. Then there's an intro, which we're in. Intro kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's hard to make sense of. But for a lot of listeners, it's a wind down. For a small percentage of listeners, they skip it. And then for a small percentage of listeners, they fall asleep during it. And then another percentage of listeners listen during the day to calm down. But the intro is like about 12 minutes of me, I guess, rambling, just like I am now. Like where I'm trying to, I think this is oblique. Like, I'm also accidentally oblique. They'd say, what What are the opening lines of the Accidental Punist, Scoots? Something accidentally oblique. I don't have, those are two of the opening words, but not the most opening words. They're part of the opening sentence. Because when I'm doing the intro, I try to explain what the podcast is right up front, like I am now, but then I just naturally go off topic, and that's what puts people to sleep or helps you wind down. So the intro is a show it's a part of the podcast. It's an intro. It's just long and meandering, but it is full of, it's chock full of content. It's chock full of meanders. The Accidental Meanderist, that's would be my one of my many autobiographies. Maybe somebody else could write that. You're right. Well, maybe one of the imaginary beings within my brain who could get to work and actually do something. Hint, hint, hint. No, you're just, okay. Now you're pulling Waldler and Stadler for whatever their names are. Stadler and Wardorf. What if Worf hung out with Stadler and Waldorf? Those are the critics on the Muppet Show. I think it could go either way. Like Worf could sit with them and get along and be laughing, or it could be, they could, meet the wrong side of a Klingon. That was actually like that was a Tingler I wrote, the wrong side of a Klingon. Okay, enough about me. So that's the intro of the show, I guess was what I was saying. Then there'll be a little business between the intro and the story. Then tonight will be our episodically modular series, Big Farm in the PI, Big Farm in the Sky, PI, Season 2, the Phantom Minnow season. Yeah, then we have some thank yous and good nights at the end. If you ever want to skip the ads and the thank yous and stuff, you just become a $5 a patron. So that's the structure of the show. Then a couple of rules around the show, including that new rule that we just came up with. But you don't need to listen to this podcast. You can just kind of barely pay attention. Or you can listen. There's a lot of people that listen. Like collectively. But percentage-wise, yeah, most people fall asleep. But I'm here to the end to keep you company. Because there is no pressure to fall asleep. I'm here. You could run episode after episode. If you can't sleep, I'll be here to barely entertain you. But to be here, I got a whole story coming up about pop-up shops in a retirement community. Oh, boy. Talk about action. It'll be kind of, won't be action-packed. Like I said, whatever other joke I made about chock full of meander-packed. That'll be like the commitment. If we ever form a group, you'll have to sign the Meander Pact. Well, I've joined Scoots' club where everybody goes out and tells bedtime stories and helps one another, treats people with dignity and respect and kindness. Had to sign the Meander Pact. What's the Meander Pact? Well, let me tell you about it, actually. Have a seat. First off, before we get to the Meander Pact, did you know the Sleeping Podcast, there's no pressure to fall asleep and no pressure to listen? He's there around an hour. Well, I thought you were going to tell me about the Meander Pact. Oh, yeah. Also, another thing I was thinking of was Scoots' famous rule that he came up with in 2019, that no runes in bed. Of course, Scoots always was someone that mixed up RUNESs and RUINSs. And even when he said it, it always kind of ran together. But we all knew what he meant, kind of, that you shouldn't, take that Rosetta Stone, put it in the frickin' other room. Like, we don't need it in the bedroom. No rune-covered sarcophagi or tablets or even, you say, who gave you a rune color? You say, well, my dear, this pillow is rune covered. I have a rune-based pillowcase. Okay, sorry, I don't want any runes in my bedroom, period. A pillowcase, even bedding-based runes or rune-based bedding. It hasn't been deciphered. I'll be thinking about, just keep the runes in other rooms. Why don't you keep it in that room we use for all that stuff? The solarium? No, that's room for the plants. The observatory? No, that's room for the telescopes. It's the other one, like, that has those in there. Oh, the room with, all the other stuff in there. Right, all the other runarium. Oh, I thought that was the room where Scoots pretended he was any of the famous Roonies. Well, that too. That's why it's called the runarium. It's for runes and yeah, that's the same room. Okay, I'll take all my runes out and put them in there. Okay, great. And then you can come back to bed after that. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of rules here. No listening needed. No need to pay attention. No pressure to fall asleep. And, keep runes and other things. Like we said, those compasses or whatever the heck you had when you were in middle school. Even protractors. Sorry, I don't know what a protractor and a compass have to do with runes. Oh, no, I'm just on the middle of a tangent because I signed the Meander Pact. I was just trying to tell you what a Meander Pact was. Are you sure it was a Meander Pact, or in the middle of that meander, did you forget what it was? Yeah, I got to go. Scoots, I'm going to turn it back over. Thanks. That was great. Meander, by the way. Classic. Also, you're right. No runes in bed. And I can hear the few people in the world that have rune-based professions. And I'd say it's bedtime. Time to take a breaky poo. You say, well, no, I'm an amateur runist. And I'd say, okay, yeah, I'll make an exception for you if I could come observe you doing your amateur runing. And are you writing runes or are you reading runes? Someone just in my brain they said I'm sculpting runes. And I'd say, that's awesome. But, do your sculpting as part of your wind down. You probably shouldn't be sculpting in bed. Well, okay, you're right. You may be able to sculpt in bed. Maybe just sculpt in your room. You really sculpt runes, eh? I think if I was a hip hopper, I would work that into one of my, I sculpt rhymes like I sculpt runes, and I really do. And when I do, the something swoons when I'm sculpting runes. That was from that was a B-side, Sculpting Runes, it was called. And then in parentheses, I put ruins, because it was like part of my, it was one of my ones for when I was doing freestyle stuff. Also, that was all imaginary. Anyway, I got to get back to you here. So if you're new, this is a pretty good intro because this is what the rest of the show is going to be like, just more story-based, teetering on thousands of meanders. But really, it's a friendly show to take your mind off of stuff and to keep you company, either while you fall asleep or while you're in bed, if you can't sleep. I'm your boar friend, I'm your boar bae, I'm your boar cuz, I'm your boar sib. Your boar bestie, if I could apply to be that. If we're in the San Diego region, your boar bruh. I'm here to help. That's the main thing, because I've been there. Now, if you're listening, give it a few tries. There's a lot of people who listen to this podcast, and almost all of them say, hey, it took 2 or 3 tries before it worked for me, or before I realized that there's no figuring this thing out. Because when he sculpted runes, it more looks like someone just made a oblong clay, it's not a ball, but so that's what his runes look like. He's the one that ruined runes for me. I was an amateur runist until I heard his tangents about runes, and then it was ruined. I do delight in words, by the way. Sorry, not runes, but words I do. Is any restaurant based? Runes restaurant? Yeah, you're right. It won't work. It's an easy one. Restaurant Rune, yeah, you wouldn't want to eat there. You'll say, that's the last place I ate. What makes me laugh? I don't know. So I'm glad you're here. I hope you can pick that up in the tone of my voice. I'd really like to help. If the podcast, you gave it 2 or 3 tries and it doesn't work for you, or you're listening right now and you're like, you're using other words about ruin or ruin about me, that's okay. It's not for everybody. Check out sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you for some other options. But I really do hope this podcast helps, that can take some of the seriousness out of bedtime, bring you some levity. Oh, some part of my brain just said I'm sculpting a levity-based rune, and it's a terrific. Put it in the runarium. And so I'm glad you're here. I really work hard. I strive and I yearn to help you fall asleep. And thanks so much for coming by. Here's a couple of ways we keep the show going. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, feelings, feelings like emotions, physical sensations. If you've had a change in schedule or time or temperature, whatever's keeping you awake, I'd like to take your mind off that. I'd like to acknowledge it could be anything, but it's legitimate. There's a lot of people that listen to the show, and I don't know what everybody's going through, uh, but like I can relate. I know how it feels there in the deep, dark night. And I like to keep you company. That's basically the gist of the show. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, extra stuff, so many extra words. This is the one podcast where you'd say it could be 5 minutes, but there's so many bonus words and extra words. It's kind of like, oh, you know what? Maybe this could be a metaphor. Is when you go to that the big chain sandwich shop. Though there's other chain sandwich shops now, and other things built on that model. Maybe we'll talk about that as a metaphor for the podcast. If you're new, though, welcome. Here's a couple things. This show's different. Give it a few tries to see if it works for you. Structurally, the show starts off with business. That's how we keep it free. Then there's an intro. Intro's about 12 minutes. As you get through listening your first, second, third time, you'll see kind of the intro is a big part of the show. Everybody uses the show and the intro in a different way. But the majority of listeners, they kind of wind down as the intro's going, get ready for bed. It kind of just gives you, it gets like, maybe I've never explained this. People always say, the intro kind of developed into a 12 to 16 minute thing over time based on listener feedback. Part of me when I first started the show or times it's like, oh, it'd be cool if it went straight into the story. But then if you go straight into the story, then you're expected to kind of, I don't know, it kind of doesn't help with the easing into bedtime, which is what kind of seems like it actually works, the drifting off to sleep, where I don't want anything to feel rushed. I want to give you room. And there is the fact that you could skip ahead. Normally it's around 18 minutes or so and get close to the beginning of the story and start listening in there. But there's also this idea that it's like, I'm glad you're here. Like one thing I've been learning is I'm becoming more of an adult and trying to live more fully in this world is it's really important how you greet people. I don't tend to be the most enthusiastic person. But I'm tending to notice the importance of enthusiasm. If you're glad to see someone, letting that out and expressing it is a powerful thing. And it's a powerful thing to feel that in the other direction and be like, I'm really so glad to see you. Like sometimes there's an unintentional meta communication going on there. And so greeting people in a way is equal to your feelings. I mean, sometimes you might be like, hey, how you doing? Like, I mean, because you mean it. I don't know, but with me, I tend to do, like, if I'm distracted and thinking about something else, worrying about filing papers or whatever, and then I'm greeting someone, it might dampen down my natural enthusiasm for seeing them. And that's kind of what the intro is in some paradoxical way. It is a dampen down. It's like I have such enthusiasm that you're here and that I get to try to put you to sleep. But at the same time, the paradoxical arc is that it realistically, I want to give you plenty of room to fall asleep. But at the same time, I want you to know that I really, truly am glad you're here and that I'm trying to establish this as a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. So I think that's kind of the. Oh, so if you're new, yeah, the show starts off with an intro, really 12 minutes to 14 minutes, part of the show. And then we'll be talking about, welcome back to GOT. We'll be talking about season 1 of GOT or episode 1. I don't know, is this season 7? I'm not sure because I'm recording this before the episode comes out to be ready. But so I'm glad you're here. I'm glad GOT's back. And you might say, well, I don't watch that show. Yeah, no problem. It'll be a pretty tangential recap of the episode and things that came up during the episode. It'll also be through the lens of Sleep with Me. So it'll be very calming and soothing and meandering. And, for the most part, the feedback I get is that, wait a second, you were talking about, that's what you were talking about? I thought you were talking about the difference between gravies. Really? That was about, season 6, episode 8. Actually, I don't think maybe there were 8 episodes in season 6. I don't think so, though. So possibly I could have been talking about an episode that doesn't exist. That is possible. So, um, so we'll talk about Game of Thrones. These episodes are supersized. They just happen to be, again, something that grew out of listener feedback and just making the show. So the Game of Thrones episodes, we'll talk about the episode. If we have time, we'll talk about things that came up in the episode. Like, if there, like, let's just say, for example, yeah, there was something about gravy. I'd say, well, according to this, gravy must contain these things. Or, Alton Brown's philosophy of gravy. This is imaginary, though I'm sure Alton Brown has it. Is it Elton Brown or Alton Brown? What about, wonder if Alton Brown likes Elton John. Also, they could be like, they could open up like any kind of business where you have people's names or like a publisher, Alton, Elton, John Brown, or Alton, John, Elton Brown, maybe. So where was I? I was talking about, so we'll talk about the episode, then things that came up during the episode. Then we'll check in with Tom and M. Pounce. They have a fictional series they're going to introduce, a short fictional series, like influenced by old time radio. Then we'll check in prayers to the old gods and the new. And I think that'll be it. That'll be, that'll be how we do it. I don't have a release schedule yet because I'm still as I'm preparing for the season to start, trying to decide if we're going to go every week or we're going to spread it out. So we have that going. I think so. That's the structure of the show. Also, if you're new, here's a couple of things. You don't need to listen to this podcast. You may have figured that out already. You can listen, but you could also turn it down low. You could put it on the other side of the room. Just kind of see what works for you as you start to use the show. This show is also no pressure to fall asleep. I'm going to be here over an hour for these Game of Thrones episodes. And the whole idea of the show is I'm here to keep you company as you drift off, to walk at your side as you fall asleep. Not so much to put you to sleep, but to be your boar friend, your boar companion, your boar bay, your boar cuz, your boar sib. If you're from San Diego, your Barbara, to keep to be here as you drift off, to take your mind off of stuff. And yeah, use like a bunch of different things, like kind of like if you're going to that sub shop and you say, okay, if we're viewing it through a neutral lens, you'd say, okay, well, I want some of those, that. They say, okay, what about the squirty stuff? Oh, yeah, use the one. Oh, that purple squirty stuff. Yeah, I'd like some of that. You could choose your type of, what do they call? What do they call it? A conduit. I'm trying to not to talk about FOOD directly, even though I am. The delivery system for it. The structural. The thing that offers it the structural integrity. Squirty stuff. You got your building block or whatever. Your construction material. I don't know what you call that, exterior. I guess that's more of the I don't know, your foundation. Oh, no. So see, even that, I say, well, Scoots was going to describe it to us, but then he kind of got distracted, went off topic because he was trying to. That's how kind of I talk about Game of Thrones too. So you get the feature material, we'll call it, and then you have the stuff that goes on it. Like you got your stuccos, your paint, your accoutrement. I think they say they don't say, believe me, they don't say it there. They say you want these with that. You want to make it a value pack or whatever. You say, well, I'm here. Can you go through the accoutrement again? And they even would say, sir, there's a long line here. You see, what do you call that, a conduit, or is that the delivery vessel? You want that warm or cold? And then I usually, anytime someone says that, I say, it's cold as, warm hands, warm heart, cold hands, they say. And it's strange that I can hear artists, but you're an artiste. You don't have accoutrement. Well, this is only entertaining in a sleep podcast, but he say, "See, buddy, give me a break." I say, "You're right. You're right. I apologize. I apologize." Uh, but then also, once you go through that part, then you still have lots of others. So you say, "Well, I want some of that stuff. Want some of put some of that on there. Oh yeah, dust it up. I want some of that dust." So it gives you a lot of choices. In this show, you can kind of listen any way you want. Like, because sometimes my words feel to a lot of people that listen unrelated to anything I'm saying or any points I'm making. And to someone, that specializes in amuse-bouche and accoutrement, they might say, you can't have that with that. It's just not. I said, well, anyway, whom are we to judge? They're artists. So I don't know if I had a point in there other than I'm here to take your mind off of stuff. And I'm here to keep you company. I want you to get a chance to get a good night's sleep so you can be out there in the world flourishing. I truly believe you deserve a good night's sleep. I want you to believe that too, even if it's a little bit out of our grasp at times. And, just take a breath with me. I'm here to help. Now, this show doesn't work for everybody, as I kind of said, so give it a few tries. If it doesn't work for you, or you feel your lizard brain, saying, stuff, sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. It has links to other sleep stuff, a couple other options. So check that out. And I think that's it. I just want to help you fall asleep. I've been there. That's the main thing, out there in the deep, dark night. And I want to keep you company, take your mind off it, unless, make it less of a rigmarole. Most of all, I really appreciate you checking the show out, and I appreciate your time. And just, I do strive and yearn, and I really want to help you fall asleep. Here's a couple of ways we keep the show going. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots with a tuck you in message here for our bedtime story podcast. We're trying out, and I kind of said this, free way to support Sleep With Me and bedtime stories from Sleep With Me is join our referral program, sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer, REFER. You get rewarded for introducing people to the free version of Sleep With Me, including access to Sleep With Me Plus. But most of all, just think about what your favorite podcast is or one of your favorite podcasts, and then support that podcast. It doesn't have to be Sleep With Me, but just to support your favorite podcast because they could use your support right now. And if you decide, Sleep With Me is actually my favorite podcast, well, wow, blushing, seriously, even though it's imaginary here in this context, and support it at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Or listen to a show you love and see how they want to be supported. Thanks.